Titans make a huge move in 2024 NFL free agency. They get Calvin Ridley on a 4-year, $92 million deal. And Ran Carthon says, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. We're going to try and win and compete this year. We appreciate you hanging out with us here on Titans Today to bring you breaking news. I'm your host, Jace Andrews. This came right from the source, Ian Rappaport, saying sources the Titans are signing Jaguars star wide receiver Calvin Ridley, completing their free agency with a splash. A stunner. The 29-year-old Ridley gets a 4-year, $92 million deal with $50 million fully guaranteed on a contract negotiated by his agents. Now, I'm telling you right now, this is exactly why you subscribe, because when breaking Titans news happens, we get a video to you. We already had a short. Guess what? Now we got a video for you to break it all down. So hit that subscribe button, because you're not going to find better Titans coverage. And we know right now, Ran Carthon is saying, we're all in. We're getting this thing moving right freaking now with Brian Callahan as our head coach. Let's talk about Ridley a little bit, because this guy was coming off a season where he did not play football. He did not play in 2022. But he had 1,000 yards last year in Jacksonville, and that was somewhat of a disappointing factor to fans. In spring training, in free agency and prior to the season, he was really looking like he could potentially be a top wide receiver in the NFL. He finished with 8 touchdowns, and although 1,000 yards is great, people expected more, which as a Titans fan sounds pretty nice, because that probably means he's got more in the tank. And well, hopefully we see that. Now, he had some problems, let's say, in 2021 and 2022. He stepped away from football due to personal issues in 2021, then followed that up with the whole gambling thing that had him suspended for the 2022 season. And he's been in the league not that long, considering he's 29 years old. Played a good portion of time in Alabama, arrived at college when he was already into his 20s. Ridley, though, has a lot of upside. The problem is, to me, it's a lot of money. 4 years, $92 million is nowhere near chump change. We're talking big boy bucks right now. And will Calvin Ridley, I'm not so sure he's worth that. I think he could be, and it could work out perfectly for Ran Carthon. But you're paying this guy like he is a top-tier wide receiver without really seeing too much from besides this past year. And we know, we've seen it before, people can be good for 1 year. Consistency is what gets you paid. Calvin Ridley didn't need consistency. It took him 1 year after coming back from the suspension to get 1,000 yards, and Ran Carthon said, here's a check. Let's get you in Tennessee, which I will say, I like that Carthon is being aggressive. That's what we need here in Tennessee. That's what they need to do. This is why Amy Adams-Strunk has really leaned on him and been able to fire Mike Vrabel and say, hey, Ran, we're going to make sure this team is good, and I want you to be a part of it. So I appreciate the effort from Ran Carthon. Now, let's talk monetary value here from Aaron Wilson. The Titans are signing Calvin Ridley to a 4-year, $92 million deal, which is a lot. $50 million of it guaranteed per a league source. So he's staying in the AFC South just with the Tennessee Titans. All this being said, let's say he is not good after 2 years. The Titans could cut him and save around $40 million or so, because $50 million of it is guaranteed. That means there's $42 million of it left on the table for incentives and other things that could be cut past 2 years. So I'm curious to see the full details of this contract, to see how much of a cap hit is this year. How much of a cap hit is it over the next couple years? Well, how much money can the Titans save should they choose to cut him 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line? Because I know the Titans are in somewhat of a rebuilding start. I like what they did last year. Will Levis was great. He looked great on the field. Now you are able to get him weapons. You got Pollard early in this free agency. Now you get Calvin Ridley, who I think will be a very good weapon. I'm not sitting here and saying that Calvin Ridley was a bad signing. Not by any means. I'm just not so sure about the money just yet, which is why I want to ask you this. What do you grade this signing for the Tennessee Titans? Because I have a grade in mind. Maybe it's surprising you considering the way I'm talking, but give me a grade for Calvin Ridley signing of 4 years, $92 million, 50 of it guaranteed, A, B, C, D, or F. I know some of you are out of school, time to get back in. Some of you are on spring break. Well, hey, give me a grade instead. A, B, C, D, or F, grade the signing of Calvin Ridley for the Tennessee Titans. I give it a B minus. Now, the reason behind this is simply because of money. If the Titans were able to sign Ridley for, say, 4 years with more around the $80 million, $85 million, I would give this an A. The problem is you're making him a top 10 paid wide receiver per year in the NFL. I don't think that's deserving. I mean, if you look at these names, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman Jr. is where it starts to get a little hectic, Calvin Ridley, and Terry McLaurin. I don't think Ridley's name has the same tone as everybody else on this list. I think it could, but this is just a huge risk, which is what you had to do. I'm not going to fault Ran Carthon for it. The fun part about this was the Titans were a dark horse. The Titans were not expected to be in on Ridley. They talked about him as maybe a potential candidate, but there were 2 teams that were focused in on signing Calvin Ridley. One of them being the Jacksonville Jaguars and trying to retain him. The other, well, that was the New England Patriots. Now, we did get reports that the money surrounding those 2 were less than what the Titans end up coughing up. So, supposedly, again, this is just reports, the Patriots were nearing around $22 million per year for Calvin Ridley. The Jaguars were around $20 million a year for Calvin Ridley. Well, the Titans went up. They said 23 plus. I'm not going to say that it wasn't a smart move to try and just say, here, please sign with us, because it's going to be hard. You're in a rebuilding mode. You're going to have to throw some money around. But it could come back to bite you later on. And that's the point I want to get across, because T. Higgins has requested a trade. I don't understand the concept of signing this big money for Calvin Ridley if there have been no talks with the Bengals. Because if I'm Ran Carthon, I was on the phone yesterday with the Bengals all day saying, how can I get T. Higgins? What's it going to take? Besides our first-round pick of this year, everything's on the board. You want to get something from us? You want picks? You want our first rounder next year and our second rounder this year? They're yours. Give us T. I love that Ran is making moves. And I love the upside of Calvin Ridley. It's just a lot to put on one player, in my opinion, and an offense that is already trying to rebuild. And if this fails, it's going to be a tough couple years past that in terms of money. However, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I know that I may be sounding bad here, but this is a good thing. I'm happy for the Titans. I'm excited for what's to come. And if you are too, hit this subscribe button, because guess what? The better the Titans are, the more fun we get to have here on Titans Today. And I do think this will make the team better, at least for this year, and I hope into the future as well. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, Will Levis, a potential of Joe Alt, Lloyd Cushenberry. This offense is looking really, really great. It's just about making sure the defense can stay at least suitable as well. So hit that subscribe button, because I'm telling you, the Titans are on the way up, and so is Titans Today. This was not the only signing the Titans made today. They made a big one in the QB market as well, signing Mason Rudolph to a 1-year deal worth up to $3.6 million. 6th season in the Steel City. He finally comes over to Nashville, and he's going to get to play with Brian Callahan. Now, Mason Rudolph, the former Oklahoma State Cowboy, showed a lot of prowess in college and was drafted by the Steelers in some ways to be a Big Ben replacement. Obviously, that never worked out. We had the whole Myles Garrett situation where he got a helmet slammed on his head. He had a couple of situations where he was knocked on his butt. He had a tough time in Pittsburgh. But he was the single reason that the Steelers made the playoffs last year. Did he perform well in the playoffs? Not a chance. That game against the Bills was terrible. He looked bad. But does he show some promise? Yes. And is Will Levis your starter? Yes. This is a depth option for if Will Levis goes down, you don't have to worry about putting Malik Willis out there. You have a guy with starter-level experience and backup-level experience in your depth chart. And ultimately, it's also going to help out just kind of molding Will Levis. This is a guy who has been experienced in some facet in playing in the NFL and playing under pressure, because when Mason has gotten his chance to shine, he's had to be under a lot of pressure. And he's performed in some of them. He's not performed in other of them. So We will just have to see. Okay, let's run through all the moves the Titans have made here in 2024 NFL free agency because we know they had a lot of money to spend, and they've done exactly that. Tony Pollard, the first one off the board, 3 years, $24 million, the Derrick Henry replacement. Him and Tajay Spears, pretty good. I don't know if it seems a lot of money for a secondary back in some ways. I'm not going to say he'll be the starter, but it's going to be a running back by committee with him and Tajay, in my opinion. Lloyd Cushenberry, great deal. 4 years, $50 million. You needed a center. You got him. You help out the offensive line. Now you draft Joe Alt. You got Skoronski, Cushenberry, and Alt as your front three. Will Levis, you're fine. And then Chidobe Awuzie, 3 years, $36 million. Awuzie was a pretty good cornerback with the Bengals. And he said, and I quote, "I want to go with Brian Callahan because I want to be a part of the culture he's going to build." That speaks a lot of prowess here for Chidobe Awuzie and how he feels about Mr. Brian Callahan, how the Titans should feel about him. Kenneth Murray, they get a linebacker, the Azeez Al-Shaair replacement as he goes to the Texans. Murray in for the Titans, 2 years, $15.5 million. A couple of other tackle signings. Got an offensive tackle, Shattuck Charles. Lower-level signing, helps out the offensive line. Julius Chestnut, he may be cut. I got to be honest. They signed him, and it's, again, a running back deal. I assume Hassan Haskins will probably be cut, and he may get that spot. Keeps him there in Tennessee. So a good value. Again, you had him here. He knows the team. Worst comes to worst, you put him on the practice squad. He's scout team. Mason Rudolph and Calvin Ridley, 2 of the recent signings. And then a more recent signing, Nick Folk. They keep the kicker from last year in Tennessee. He will be here for a 1-year deal of $3.75 million. So as of right now, Ran Carthon is busy making some small deals, making some big deals, and making a splash deal with Calvin Ridley. So you've seen all the moves. You've seen what Ran Carthon's done. I have to think now the moves for Tennessee will slow down. The only thing that I can wait for is a trade for L'Jarius Sneed. What's your confidence level in these moves? Scale it 1 through 10, 1 being least confident, 10 being most confident. The Tennessee Titans got some firepower heading into the 2024 season. What are y'all thinking about it? I'm going with a 7. I like the moves. I think there's some moves that are questionable, but overall, this is what you needed to do in Nashville. You had to take some risky moves. You did exactly that. I like Calvin Ridley. I think it's a good move. The money, it may hurt you, but oh well. You had to do something, and Ran Carthon in his second year makes a splash. I like that he is taking initiative and saying, we're going to try. We're going to try. I'm not going to sit here on my butt and act like we're a lower-level market team. No, we're not doing that. We are a team that deserves to win, and I am going to make sure we get there. Like the video if you like what's going on in Nashville, because I certainly appreciate Ran Carthon and the way he has been able to take hold of this team and immediately start building on what he was left with. And honestly, he was left with a pretty bad situation. I like Brian Callahan. I like Amy Adams-Strunk. This team is in a positive spot in a lot of ways. Hopefully Ridley works out, and I'm excited to see what happens in 2024. We appreciate you watching, Titans fans. You know what to do in the comments section. Tighten up and peace out.